everybody. Welcome to the Jen Carroll Show. It is Wednesday, December 18th, and I have a little bit of personal stuff going on that's exciting. I can't share a lot yet, but the universe is finally opening some doors, and I cannot wait to share it with you. But let's just say that good things are happening and send positive vibes because I would like them to keep happening. And I seriously cannot wait to share this with you, but I can't yet. So yay. So instead we'll turn to the zeitgeist. And it's funny because I was reading the news this morning and we're starting to see the shift of folks already getting sickened by what's coming and sickened by what's happening. And it's interesting to kind of get the overall ethos of things through a social media channel where you could pick up on the vibe of being bummed out. For anybody who's political, and if you're listening to this podcast, I know you are. I don't know how deeply you are, but I know you give a crap. Thank you. But we're trying to keep a stiff upper lip and get into the holidays, and please do your best to enjoy the holidays. In fact, what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about what I talked about before. It's not about the holidays, so this is about actually real life, not just that glorious period where we can pretend like we're someone else and there's lots of good food and beverages. I'm going to change. I was going to come in and talk a little bit more about the general mood, but just this afternoon, an interesting study was shared on Blue Sky that really piqued my interest. It piqued my interest because I think in the United States, we really take for granted that we have good soil, and I'm really talking about dirt in the ground. We have good soil, we grow good food, and we have an FDA and other regulators that work hard to try to make sure our food supply is secure. And we're going to need to care a lot more about our food supply because it's going to immediately be endangered by Donald Trump. But let me back up. It's going to be endangered by Donald Trump through deportations, through lack of federal regulations, through the destruction of institutions that protect us. We know all those things. Well, let me just scare the crap out of you. They found in this study is that this is from Food Safety News, and I'll put a link on the webpage because I think it's important to know about. This study is talking about orchards or food supply is co-located near animal farming. In particular for California, it has a lot to do with these giant cow farms we have that are both dairy farms, and then we have, of course, meat farms for killing and packing meat. So here's what this study found, and this is going back a little bit, but this is where we're headed if we're not careful, is that 1 in every 5 air samples in almond orchards, which, by the way, almond orchards are tremendous water sucks. I know we all love our almonds, but those of you drinking almond water, I'm going to punch you because I don't even want to tell you how much real water it took to make your almond water, because almond water is not a thing. But go ahead, have it. Anyway, when the air samples, 1 of every 5 air samples in almond orchards that were near a poultry operation, in this case, that was the meat, tested positive for E. coli. This was during a 2-year study. So this interested me because I'm like, wow, if cross-contamination happens, it really does put our food supply at risk. But then guess what? As you look even more deeply into the story, there's another story that Jenny provided that said they believe peaches were contaminated with salmonella that sickened 100 people because the peaches were dusted with what they're calling fugitive dust. And that means dust that was contaminated with salmonella. And the way it works with food supply is generally there is no evidence under commercial field conditions where food is contaminated from its roots to the fruit. They call it the root to fruit with something. But if you think about it, that would be the whole containing aspect of growing food, right? From the root to the fruit. But the dust is being dusted on top. And so it's airborne salmonella, and it's a serious possibility that this will start to go crazy and it'll start to propagate. So I'm saying that we need to just pay attention to this. This is where regulators really do us a big favor when they're paying attention to these emerging changes. And you can imagine with climate change, this could even become more pernicious. But I'll also add to it that you may not know these numbers. In 2022, so just a mere 2 years ago, 60% of fresh fruit, 60% of fresh fruit, and 29% of vegetables that we eat in the United States comes to us through imports. So I can go on and on about our own democracy and our own regulations, but the fact is a lot of the food we eat, 60% of fruit and 30% of veggies, are coming from outside the United States. And if these kinds of cross-contamination issues are happening here, we have no way to supervise what's happening from the food that comes from other countries. By the way, this is why you're supposed to wash your damn food, right? Wash your fruit. I went ahead and took it a little further because I thought, oh my God, that's a lot of fresh fruit and veggies. And isn't Trump talking about taxing all of that? I'm sorry, adding a tariff to anything coming in from Canada and Mexico? And the answer is, hell yes, he is. And so just to give you a little fun fact as we start down the tariff track, the U.S. has imported $39 billion, $30 billion worth of fresh fruits and vegetables annually. $30 billion, people. So Trump is expected to increase all those imports. That $30 billion price tag will jump 25% with the additional consumer tax. That's the tax you and I pay on our food for anything he's importing. He's laid it out. He has committed to doing that. Oh, I'm sorry. I have the quote. What am I thinking? I have the quote right here. On January 20th, this is out of his mouth, as one of my many first executive orders. I'm going so far in a bunker. I don't even know where the bunker is. I want to go to Sam and Dean's bunker on Supernatural because I always think that space is so cool. On January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada. He's not charging them anything, but these are his words, to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. This is like layers of stupidity on top of more layers of stupidity. He's not charging Mexico or Canada the tariff. You guys all know that. He is putting a 25% consumer tax on healthy food. That's the most important part, because don't get me started on food, but we know processed food is the worst. Processed food is the key to your health destruction. And I eat processed food. We all do. But it's something that should be, in your ratios there, in your food pyramid. If we want to go way back to those of us who are Gen X and Gen X adjacent. From our food period, processed foods never appeared on the pyramid. They don't exist there. So really your ratio of processed food to food where it came from and you can see the real ingredients should be something, 10% of your diet? It just shouldn't be that high. And yet here's this McDonald's eating jackass talking about how he's going to add to the price of real healthy food so that we can't even be healthy. On top of everything else, even pursuing being healthy is going to be so much more expensive. So there you go. Food is in the zeitgeist today. Maybe it's appropriate as we head into Christmas. Winter's, of course, the worst time to try to get anything fresh. But I live in an agrarian area. We have really good dirt. We try not to turn it into a parking lot. And I really do appreciate the fact that I have access to fresh, good, healthy food. We probably all should. I think we take it for granted. But I wanted to lead with that today. Enjoy your food, but be aware that our food could be really at risk, not only for what we could catch from it, but and trying to get our hands on it, it's going to get very expensive. So that's your zeitgeist today. When I come back, I have my big story of the day. I'll be right back with that. Okay, we're back. And we are going to talk about a heady subject. The reason it's connected to what I did in the last podcast is it was a much more fluffy, fun podcast. And I talked at the end about including how to have a good holiday and how to connect with people I think a lot of us forget, especially if you're of a certain age, and I'll say maybe over 40, but it works for anybody. But as adults, we forget that we help create the memories the kids remember. We create those moments, the special moment where you played football with them in the street. Katie remembers that so well. She was so bad at it. We're all really bad at it. But those times when the adults take time to see the people who aren't normally seen or often get shushed away or told to be quiet, that's an important time. So today, I'm not talking about that, but I just wanted to make that connection why I said it was something that I brought with me from the holiday podcast, is that I want to talk about agency, because democracy without agency isn't democracy. And agency is just another noun that needs to be a verb. It's funny, patriotism, it was the one that I said is a noun that needs to be a verb. And here's agency again. I think we've taken, even our words have gotten lazy. They've just said, I'm not going to be active anymore. I'm just going to sit over here and recline and become a noun. I need to talk to the Webster's people about that. So let's start with a definition of human agency. It's the capacity to act independently. Now just hear me on this. Agency is the best word in the world. And it has everything to do with your ability to be independent, to make choices, and to influence the outcomes in your life and environment. Agency is how you make shit happen. It's more than the ability to choose. It's the belief that what you choose matters. So some people have a lot of agency, especially in their brain, like me, who thinks she can have a lot of influence. But I do know that my choices matter. Where I choose to expend my energy is a big damn deal. It's often why I've left jobs when I've been in ethical binds, because I'm not going to do that. You're not going to force me to be unethical. I can choose to have situational ethics, but that's my choice. So agency is essentially for developing an identity and feeling worthy, and the ingredient needed to tap our constitutional right to pursue happiness. If you don't have agency in the Constitution, in the Constitution, you are granted the right to pursue happiness, the pursuit of happiness. Those are the words. It doesn't promise you happiness, but it promises you the ability to pursue it. And that's tied to agency. That you have to have agency to pursue happiness. You have to believe you can manifest it, right? So without it, without agency, people may experience helplessness, stagnation, despair. And without a doubt, it leads, especially in a democracy, to apathy, withdrawal, and cynicism. In fact, it's interesting. If you look at what Elon's done to Twitter, his X, it's a testament to humans without agency. I think so many of the people that are on X, I'm sorry, I can't call it that. So many people still on Twitter are people who have no effing agency. They are feckless pissants that are sitting in a dark hole somewhere and literally have no control over their lives. I'm not even sure half of them know how to cook. Honestly, there's a troll capacity there that's insane. But I feel like Twitter is just a great testament to humans without agency. It provides this illusion of making a difference without making a difference. And in fact, we all know social media, that's the greatest problem with social media. It seems like you're doing something, you're not doing anything. Now, I will argue that there is some value in social media because sometimes you have to talk to people to even clarify how you're thinking. And I do think social media, especially what's happening on Blue Sky right now, reminds me of the early days of Twitter, when Twitter was so damn effective in connecting us with breaking news or emerging news, and we could kind of argue and test out our own thinking about things, see what other people's points of view were. It would help us hone on how we were thinking. So I don't want to throw away social media. I just want to make sure that we know that just popping off is not making a difference. So let's talk first. I would like to talk about the human condition before we talk about democracy and agency. But when we talk about agency developmentally, and this is stuff I studied in school because I used to think little kids were the reason parents got divorced. Wonder where that came from, Jen. Yep, I know there's people out there like me. I know you totally thought it was your fault and that kids were a pain in the ass and kids were made to be seen and not heard and kids were just pieces of turd or like just property. Like there was a whole thing going on for those of us that are 60s, 70s kids. We knew we didn't matter. Poor 50s kids, those boomer kids, I don't even want to talk about them. They weren't allowed to do anything. They're all just running the streets and whatever, being wild animals. But when it comes to agency and we talk about children, what I learned at UC Davis in developmental psych was that kids are amazing. And they can and desire agency. So here's the scoop. Children develop agency when caregivers allow them to make decisions within safe boundaries. Seriously, you can let your kids decide things. That's that choice thing. Would you like to do this or that? And my constant caution of always ask what's your idea, because adults don't always know what's this or that. Sometimes kids have a totally different idea. And if you would like to have a richer life and a smarter kid, ask their idea. Please ask them their ideas. But when it comes to the littles, whether they are choosing a bedtime story or picking out clothes, these moments shape their understanding of independence and competence. And this is actually where I usually get on my soapbox about the significance of the RIE approach to child rearing. And I have the link in there this time in this story, because I want you to go take a look. If you're anywhere near littles, even if you're Auntie, Grammy, however you are, if you're near littles, you should understand RIE. It's so respectful of individual humanity. And I every day thank my friend Rainbow for coming into my home and being Katie's early childhood person and knowing about RIE and teaching me about it. Research has found that fostering agency early in life, so the littles, has lifelong benefits. According to Dr. Laura Burke, early opportunities to practice agency are linked to higher self-esteem and problem-solving abilities later in life. And I even have that book that I just quoted is available on PDF. You could pay like $1 bazillion. I was looking how much it costs, but you're getting a used book and you don't need to pay $1 bazillion because this book has aged over into the Google Scholar PDF program, I believe. So there's a link to the whole book if you're interested on development throughout the lifespan. I care about development through the lifespan, but I just thought it was really interesting that it's linked to higher self-esteem and problem solving in kids later in life if they were allowed to make those choices in their young life. Conversely, over-controlling environments for the littles can hinder this growth, leading to feelings of inadequacy and dependency. And I got to say, I started thinking about realizing there's a massive rabbit hole I could have gone down here linking early childhood development with authoritative church doctrines that create these feckless, obedient adult humans, the white women who voted for Trump because God said, my husband said, whatever said, that crap. I'm sure they never had agency when they were young. They didn't learn how to manifest outcomes. In fact, I think they learned that they have to count on someone else to manifest their outcomes. So guess what? I bet there's a lot of research, it's probably been done, on these obedient humans who don't have any power except really to judge others. So that's the littles. For the teens, and this is another Jen soapbox issue because in California with Prop 13, they took out so many school-related tangential programs that were focused on giving teens agency. And maybe the teens who have the most agency today are the ones who actually have jobs. And they're hard to get. Depending on where you are, jobs for teens are sometimes hard to get because we've changed fast food restaurants where most teens used to work because that's how people have a living wage now. They go to work at the fast food restaurant, maybe two. So anyway, agency is really a cornerstone of identity. Adolescents strive to assert their independence, often challenging authority, or us, or the school, or the police, or whatever, as they explore who they are and what they value. This desire to find their center is why they separate from us. I have in here, go away, I hate you, or the one my daughter loved. You just don't get it. That one, that's the one I heard a lot. You just don't get it. Turns out she was right. I don't get it. I mean, I didn't get it because there's a big difference. She was born late in my life relative to childbearing years. I was almost 40. So a lot changed in those years. So if your kid's telling you don't get it, not only are they trying to separate from you, but you maybe really don't get it. It's really healthy. And frankly, if your kid isn't doing this in their teens, it's going to happen eventually, unless they have other issues that are going to supersede this need for independence. This period in their teens is their search for meaning, which psychologists like Erik Erikson, that's a banger, guys. Erik Erikson, he's like big in psychology, if you don't know. He argues that it's essential for healthy psychosocial development. Without the ability to make meaningful choices, teens can feel trapped and rebellious in ways that harm their long-term growth. They can really numb out on drugs because they can't do anything else. We've taken everything from them. We have criminalized so many things in adolescence that used to be just fuck around and find out stuff. Now we just want them in jail. Just jail them. That's not good for us, people. That's not good for our democracy, and it's not good for our society. Jailing teenagers is just ridiculous unless they're not salvageable, and you're going to have to argue with me pretty hard about who's salvageable. So while we encourage teens to take ownership of their decisions while guiding them through their mistakes, we help them build resilience and a sense of purpose. And resilience means they can bounce. Super important to be able to bounce. I mean, that's right up there with agency. If you want them to individuate, one of my favorite words, which means get separate and become their own person, and leave your house eventually, You must help them adult while they're in your daily care. So look for opportunities for agency. One of the ones we ended up doing, because I was desperate to try to find things, there was no clubs after school, there's no newspaper, there's no student government, there's not even events planning in any way that was meaningful and not weird. I encouraged Katie and a good friend of hers to participate in food banking. And so they went down and helped with a food kitchen once a week, but man, they loved it. And they're young, so they were being treated like adults and they were being taken seriously and their work was valued. So that's just one idea. I'm not here to solve the agency for teen problem, but I am here to flag it as something that's a real opportunity we keep missing as a society. And we've actually made more difficult for the kids. As adults, agency is both extraordinarily critical and regularly tested. So we have the responsibility as adults of balancing work, family, societal expectations, and it can really challenge our ability to feel in control. And when you have agency, you do feel like you have control. It doesn't have to be like the kind of control like, don't sit there. I don't want you to sit there. That's not control, people. That's psycho. That's just you trying to be in charge of, I don't know, the chair. Get a grip. But there's a lot of things that do challenge our control, and sometimes we have to, well, that's where choose your battles. That's where that saying comes from. You can't fight every battle, but you can fight the ones where you feel like you need to exert your agency and where it's very important about who you are and what you stand for. It's really common for adults to lose sight of agency when they're overwhelmed by external demands or societal pressures, and it leads to feelings of powerlessness. I'm going to superimpose in your brain that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which again is rudimentary, but the point is, the fewer of your needs that are met, the more feral you become. Because if you're hungry, tired, unsheltered, you don't give a crap anymore about the rules of society. Let's just face it. So what's really frustrating to me is as adults are losing agency, and we'll talk about it in a minute in the democracy part, it really affects our will to live, our will to exist. So we have to make daily decisions about what to fight for, but making the decision about what to fight for is still agency. It's when we feel like we have no choice and no control. To remind me, I put in here, like when a streaming channel decides to raise its rates for no good reasons, or we elect an authoritarian dictator with no relevant work experience. When those things happen and we feel like we have no choice, we start to disengage and get sad or angry or both. And man, social media is a mirror for that. You can tell that when it feels like I'll use an example. Sorry. Just another example, though. The AOC just tried, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just tried to become the leading Democratic member of a committee. I forget the name of the committee, oversight or something important. I guess all the committees are important, Jen, get a grip. And instead, Jerry Connolly got put in, and he's 74. That's fine, except I'm done. I'm done with having the people who have been there forever still making decisions at a time when clearly we don't need the old ways anymore. We're going to need some new ways. And if we don't let youth ascend to power, we're going to continue to pay a price. And it's going to continue to kick our own ass. We're going to kick our own asses. We have got to let youth ascend. It's so important. And I'd like them to ascend while some of these geezers are still around, because there's things we can learn from the geezers. All right, put that soapbox back under my desk. But that's what I'm worried that we see. That's what I see on social media reflected. Something like that happens. A bunch of folks get really down. They start to disengage, get sad or angry or both. Anthony Appiah is a British philosopher and writer, and he said, we cannot be content with knowing what kind of people we are. It matters too what kind of people we hope to be. And that who we aspire to be is essentially the basis of our agency. It's how we get up every day and decide and make the choices we make about who we're going to be in the world. So claiming and regaining agency as an adult can lead to profound transformations. My gosh. Oh, sorry. Go watch those videos where the guy gives the homeless people a makeover. I'm going to start crying. In one fell swoop, he gives them agency because they go from being invisible to visible. And they go from feeling like nothing to feeling like themselves again. It's transformative, guys. So get a grip. These are profound transformations as when you try to find your agency, or you're given the gift of someone helping you find your agency. Individuals who actively assert control over their lives with agency, even in small ways like setting personal goals or saying no to overcommitments, report higher levels of happiness and fulfillment. And I could do a whole nother podcast right now about life satisfaction and what I do with that test that I learned how to give from coaching. But when you start talking about life satisfaction, the people with agency have the most life satisfaction. And life satisfaction isn't necessarily happiness. Life satisfaction is really like, I'm a good person in the world and I do good things and I have meaning. There's a reason I'm here. And that's important. And then the last group I'm going to talk about, because we're not going to forget them, is the geezers. Holy crap, American culture in particular is brutal to the elderly. I happen to be blessed in a family where we actually adored our geezers. We honored them. They were fun. They got the jokes. They've always been just the best. Geezers are awesome in my family. But agency doesn't diminish with age, but societal perceptions, physical barriers, and bigotry make older adults feel invisible and essentially strip away their agency. Seniors face unique challenges like physical limitations or social isolation, making asserting agency more difficult. It's really hard if you're in a home or someplace where you feel like all your independence was stripped away. I watched my aunt and uncle go through this when I had to move them into assisted care. My uncle was pissed. He was so angry at me. It's probably good that it was my uncle, because I wasn't his kid, so he could be angry at me. It was kind of safe to be angry at me. I'm kind of glad he had that. But it was really hard, because it meant this man who was driving cars and out in the world and having a good time and loved to take his wife out to dinner or something, it had to change. It had to change because he couldn't be driving anymore, and he was having more and more memory fades that I was really worried was going to hurt somebody else. So their life situation changes, and suddenly they feel stripped of agency. Maintaining a sense of control is essential for mental health and dignity, especially always. Sense of control is essential for mental health and dignity. That's just true. But when you become a senior or a geezer, you know a lot, and yet you get warehoused or you get shoved aside. Something as simple as just accessibility, which was in the world of tech a high value item at one time, has just stopped. Even accessibility. Like my uncle, he's so cute. I'm trying to get him to text. He doesn't know. I don't know. It's not been a high value item for him. But today he texted me, and it was so cute because after the text, he signs it. He signs the text. But that's just it. Who's teaching him how to use tech? He doesn't have young people around to teach him. And in fact, we've watched technological accessibility really be cast aside as the hedge fund bros have entered the chat and cut costs. And I found this guy. His name is Jonathan Hassel. I did love that his name is Hassel. He's the CEO and founder of Hassel Inclusion, and he's keeping an eye on accessibility in tech. But the thing is, so far, it's not good. It's gone downhill since technology has entered the building. I used to work a lot on user experience and accessibility because it's really important to feel agency, that you know how to use the tech. It's accessible. I can see it. I know how it works. It's predictable. But it's not happening. So if you think about how much technology is in your life and how much we leave users out, it's a fundamental barrier to agency at this point. But there are programs like Aging Well that emphasize giving seniors choices in living arrangements or daily routines. And there's also research from Oxford that shows that seniors with higher levels of perceived control have lower rates of depression and improved physical health. Agency in later years isn't just about autonomy. It's about feeling human and valued. So you get kind of the panoply of agency here and how it goes from the little kids all the way to the seniors. And when somebody's really in agony, next time you see them suffering or they're depressed or something, it's just too hard. They don't want it. They just want to withdraw and move away. now you know, go find out if they're feeling like they have any control over their life at all. If there's anything that gives them a sense of purpose and makes them feel like they're human and valued. That's your superpower now. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the role of agency and democracy. Because agency doesn't just shape individual lives, it's also the lifeblood of democracy. The foundation of civic engagement is our ability to make choices, express opinions, and influence outcomes. Hey, everybody, remember democracy? Everybody gets to have an opinion, free speech, all that stuff. Remember that? From voting to attending town hall meetings and a whole lot of stuff in between, citizen agency ensures that democracy remains participatory and vibrant. I guess don't tell the schmucks coming into office next month that citizens actually give a shit, but we do. So democracy-driven agency starts typically at a local level. Locally, agency manifests in small but meaningful actions. Individuals exercising their agency to make a difference by joining a community group, volunteering, or even just being willing to speak up at a school board meeting. For some people, that is the most terrifying 3 minutes of their life. If you hate public speaking, that could be a real push for you. But you know what? It's also going to make you feel good about yourself for a long time. As these choices ripple outward, fostering a sense of empowerment and is palpable, and it encourages others to do the same. So every time you manifest your agency, especially at a democracy level, you are modeling good behavior and you're inspiring. I think that's another thing that happens with social media is we get inspired by other people taking a risk or other people putting out saying something that people aren't saying that needs to be said. In Italy, they did some research and they found that individuals participating in local initiatives reported feeling more connected to their communities and more confident in their ability to affect change. Sam Delgado is a reporter at Vox. Actually, she's a fellow at Vox who writes about this kind of thing. And she makes this incredibly relevant point that if we want to make change beyond the ballot box and find meaning in these challenging times, we need to engage with the people around us. So this is the essence of grassroots activism, right? And this happens locally. So think of agency locally. What could you do with the people in your neighborhood? Thank you, Mr. Rogers. But agency also can help us shape the direction of a nation. When we dial it up and target state or national change, agency expands into collective action. Socially driven initiatives listen, these are initiatives that the people did, guys. Yes, we did have representatives join and they brought their voices too, but socially driven initiatives like the civil rights movement, climate change advocacy can demonstrate how what we do can coalesce into state, national, or even global change. The people really can make a difference, and we have agency as a citizenry. Leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have embraced the power of agency, and he famously stated that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable, but rather the result of deliberate, persistent action. To get that? It's the result of deliberate, persistent action. So if you're feeling like it's time to quit, you're going to need a Coke and a smile, take a nap, and we're going to have to keep going. In fact, I'll let you have until, let's say, January 2nd. Go live large. I pulled another quote from Sam Delgado. She's a future perfect fellow at Vox. Here's the quote. Look at the social movements of the past that created lasting impact, like civil rights movement securing legislation to outlaw segregation and discrimination, or the labor movement establishing weekends and the 8-hour workday. Powering these campaigns were long-standing relationships among different people with different skills and roles who forged together into a collective by their shared values and desire for a better world. They built communities that were able to create sustained public pressure for change outside of the presidential election cycle. And that's what's key. We're going to need to effect change that has nothing to do with our electeds and election cycles. Sorry, just take that in. Elections are right now, to me, feel like the Lucy with the ball gotcha moment. We got to go deeper than that. Democracy thrives when citizens see themselves as agents of change rather than passive observers. Conversely, and this is where we're headed, when agency is prohibited, denied, or eroded, whether through voter suppression, disinformation, or apathy, democracy falters. And I do believe we got ourselves in this mess by removing agency from a lot of people who either never learned that they could have it or quit the minute it got hard. That's the Trump cult. In fact, think about it. He replaced agency. He replaced what the space agency would take with saying, I'm here to protect you. I'm here I'm your vengeance or whatever. I'm here for revenge. All he did is he basically has said he's their agency, and they easily relinquished it to him. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a problem for all of us. But that's what Trump did, and that's an interesting political tactic. I think it's bullshit, and I'm going to jump up and down and say it's bullshit really loud. But right now, agency matters as we descend into the authoritarian hellscape. Despite its importance as essential to a healthy democracy, agency is under threat. So Trump might be elected to be president of the United States, a democracy. I don't even think he knows what all those words mean in a sentence. Honestly, this is not a thoughtful guy. This is not a deep thinker. This is not a man who sits around contemplating how could he make America. He's like not Jamie Raskin. I always dream Jamie Raskin is like constant. He lays down at night and goes, how can I make America better? What can I do for a democracy today? And there's others. There are others. Let's be really happy that there are others, but not Trump and not his merry gang of thieves. Right now, we're facing structural barriers such as systemic racism, economic inequality, and we continue to continue to restrict opportunities for people to assert their agency. So if you're dealing with racism or if you're dealing with poverty, it's hard to work it up to say I can go run my life because you feel like things are being done to you rather than you doing them for yourself. Gerrymandering is a deliberate manipulation of electoral boundaries, and it entrenches power, but it undermines the principle of fair representation, leaving voters powerless to influence outcomes. If I lived in I kind of do live in a weirdly gerrymandered area, but the good news is it's all democratic gerrymandering, meaning in the area I live, it's weird, but it's still going to end up with the same outcome. I'm not really happy about that. I wish my representative understood Silicon Valley, and I don't think she does. Between you and I, she doesn't really understand English because her newsletters are terrible. But I already shared that with her and shared some opportunities for improvement. She wasn't interested. So there you go. Welcome to gerrymandering. Can really take away your agency. And then, of course, restrictive voting laws, those requiring specific forms of ID or limiting early voting or disproportionately affected marginalized communities. And it silences their voices at the ballot box. So anybody who's dealing with all those restrictive voting crap, it just does its best to take away our agency. And that's just for voting. That's just one tiny bit of our responsibility in a democracy. Voting is just kind of like paying the dues for playing the game. You got to vote. If you aren't voting, we already took away your agency. We already convinced you you're not worth it. That makes me sad. So, compounding these barriers is the growing specter of authoritarianism, where dissent is often met with intimidation or fear of retribution. For instance, journalists, political activists, and whistleblowers risk arrest or even imprisonment for challenging abuses of power. And fear is chilling civic engagement. I've actually had people tell me they're afraid to sign petitions now because they don't want Trump, which I don't know how this is going to work, but I've never been afraid of the big scary people because I grew up with big scary people. But there are people who are afraid to participate and sign even a petition. It has eroded trust in our institution and is replacing hope with doom and further disempowering individuals. And we're watching it now. And this is Timothy Snyder's do not obey in advance. And it's happening because of fear. And Maddow talked about that on Monday. Fear Fear is very powerful. I gotta think about fear. Fear is very powerful. Psychological factors appear when agency disappears. So suddenly we have complications, right? Psychological complications when we no longer have agency. If we can't control our destiny, that means it kind of turns us into victims, right? Learned helplessness, born from repeated experiences of systematic inequity, fosters the belief that efforts to enact change are futile. So learned helplessness is a big one. I feel like the MAGA cult is a whole bunch of learned helplessness people. They just want daddy to do it for them, and they don't want it to be hard, and they want to win. They want to win, because they don't have agency, and the only way they can feel like they're doing something is if they're considered a winner, which is really sad. That's not what agency is. In fact, most people moved by agency aren't thinking about winning, unless maybe you're an Olympic athlete or something, and then I can see your agency being very tied to winning, but that's such a different kind of winning. That's winning that winning is something you busted your ass and worked for. It's not winning because you follow the right team. That's just, who cares? Widespread cynicism and disillusionment replace innovation and optimism. Get that? Widespread cynicism and disillusionment replace innovation and optimism as political systems respond to corporate interests rather than citizens' needs. And that is, wow, everywhere. I was going to say that is United Healthcare. That is crazy town, but that's where we are. Political systems are responding to corporate interests rather than citizens' needs. And these dynamics don't just discourage participation, they fracture the foundation of democracy by convincing people that their actions are irrelevant and might also be punished. To fight to reclaim agency requires dismantling these barriers and restoring faith in the power of the individual and collective action. That's the killer sentence right there, guys. The fight to reclaim our agency requires dismantling the barriers and restoring the faith. And I don't think that's just by finding the right next best candidates. There's a whole lot of work we need to do on our insides before we can just come up with a candidate that's going to represent that. From combating voter suppression to challenging authoritarian overreach, reinvigorating agency is vital to safeguarding democracy. Combating these threats requires education, accessible civic tools, a cultural shift towards empowering individuals at every level of society. And there are a few programs out there like Democracy Works and Fair Fight that aim to restore agency by making civic participation more accessible and meaningful. And then I quote myself because I was funny. I'm funny. I'm sorry, but I have a pull quote that's just about me. That's about my point of view. Ultimately, the relationship between personal and civic agency is symbiotic. And what I mean by that is you need to feel like you have agency before you can feel like you can have civic agency, right? Before you feel like you could put your neck out there and take a risk. You've got to feel it. So they go together. They really exist together. And people who feel empowered in their personal lives are more likely to engage as citizens, while active participation in democracy reinforces a sense of purpose and capability. So each cycle sustains both the individual and the collective. So you get it? It's like they feed each other. If you feel really good about your agency and having agency in your life, you're going to have a lot more courage about expressing that agency as a member of a civilization and a society who needs to fight for our democracy. So these two things go together, and that's why this podcast is so long, because I wanted you to get the connection between what we need developmentally as human beings and how important it is to our democracy as an extension of our humanness. So where do we go from here? Also, I probably need to talk slower. Agency is both a gift and a responsibility. Whether helping children make their first independent choice or empowering seniors to feel seen, fostering this agency enriches all of our lives and strengthens our communities. And as citizens, reclaiming our agency just isn't about personal fulfillment, but it's about safeguarding the democratic principles that make fulfillment possible. So if we want fruit from Mexico, we're going to need to fight for the fruit from Mexico. And if we want it to not cost 25% more because our leader is a dipshit, then we're going to need to fight for that. And that might be one of the good fights. I mean, fighting for safe and healthy food might be a really important fight. So today's content's just the beginning of a conversation we're going to have a lot in the coming months. I'm going to try to make it really relevant for you so that you feel inspired and you feel like you can take action. But I'm prepared to die on this hill. I feel like agency is so fundamental to what is broken in some of us, but really broken in our democracy. And if we want to save our democracy, we're going to have to restore agency. And that's where I'm at. All right, we're back with the blue list. And as of the December 18th, I hadn't updated it in about a week. So here's what's new. There's one new arrival. And by the way, just go to jcarroll.com, the blue list. It's right in the top nav if you want to find out what's going on here. It is starting to grow. And this is how to successfully live an authoritarian lifestyle. So as our agency is being challenged and as the world is closing in on us, I'm trying to put everything I can find. And thank you for those of you, people are starting to share things with me. I really appreciate it because it's hard to keep track of all this. And some of these tips are kind of buried in other things. So if you see something, let me know. First one's holiday specific, and I'm only putting it on here because I think we need to start thinking about this. It's from the UK, and they're warning people that if you bring this forbidden item to the airport and think you're going to take it on the plane with you, you've got another thing coming. Now, because it's America, and this article comes out of the UK, I'm going to tell you what the specific item is. I should make you go read the article and discover it on your own, but it's not something we do a lot of in America unless you have ties to the UK or ties to Europe. And that's do not bring poppers. We call them poppers. They're called something else too. Don't bring poppers on the plane. They have poppers are those things where you go in and you pull the little pieces of paper on each end. It's like here's a popper. It's a toilet paper roll in wrapping, fancy. And inside the toilet paper roll that's all wrapped up and fancy. There's this. You pop it. You pull the little pieces of paper out, and the thing pops, and then inside there's a prize. That's a popper. And now everybody tell me what the other thing, it's called something else. It has a different name. Crackers. I think that they call them crackers. That's what threw me in the story. I'm like, crackers? What are they talking about? Crackers for? What kind of crackers are they bringing on this plane? I'll have a Ritz cracker. I prefer a Ritz or a Waverly wafer is one of my favorite kind of crackers, but UK, they use the wrong words for things. They call cookies biscuits. What are you going to do? Anyway, don't take crackers or poppers on the plane. But the broader point is, and the reason I included it is, wake up, pay attention to what you're going. Everything is going to be harder, including TSA. If they start underfunding TSA, or gosh, if the continuing, if the budget thing doesn't get passed, there's the continuing resolution that keeps the doors open. We might not even have TSA for Christmas. And you think your travel plans were hard prior to that. Wait till they take TSA and kick them in the pants. So the deal is the blue list item here is just be aware of what you're packing. Use your head, and less is more, because you can always get what you want when you get there. And yeah, just use your head. The next one is I think it's a very, very interesting piece of work done from the Washington Post. The problem is I am not giving the Washington Post any money right now because they're pissing me off. But they have a good piece of reporting, and I feel really bad for the people who did this. It's called Abused by the Badge, and it appears to be a list of peace officers or police or whatever you choose to call them, but I'm going to keep using the word peace officers because if we use the word peace, maybe they'll remember that's part of their job is to solve problems and not just shoot everyone. But this article, that if you have access to the Washington Post, go in and take a look. This is a list of peace officers linked to criminal behavior in stations around the United States. These are police who have done things to humans that we can show a record of, which is, we need that kind of database, right? We need something. Transparency is one of the biggest challenges we have right now. So at least if the Fourth Estate can help with transparency, so be it. I'm here for it. I think that's a very, very important role for the Fourth Estate. The next one is tightening up. This I'm seeing more than one of these guys, so I'm thinking this is going to be a big deal. I talked about one from Wired last time. This time I have one from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and what they're saying is we need to tighten up our digital privacy and security practices. So I'm not sure what they know that I don't, but I might need to go check my digital privacy and security practices. I just don't know what's going to happen. I know Elon's having a little tantrum today, and I wouldn't put spying past him, especially because he's Putin's little boy and Donald's wife. I know he's Trump's wife and Putin's little boy. It's all very sweet. But the point is that bad things could happen. And Stephen Miller, he's a piece of shit. So there's a lot of, and so is Steve Bannon. There's a lot of people out there who are going to do creepy methods to crawl up in your grill and try to stop your agency. So there you go. Tighten up your digital privacy. There's a great short video, talks about as fast as I do, explainer for immigrants and their families from the McBean immigration firm. I believe it's a law firm, but it still doesn't matter. The video is really great. So I have a link to that. 5 ways to protect yourself from deportation under Trump. It's probably, I don't consume that content all the time. It might be repetitive, but I still think it's a good thing to go take a look at. And then finally, there's this there's adoptions are going on among LGBTQ plus parents who want to adopt particularly non-biological children that they have been taking care of. And if you don't know this, for the queer community, a lot of kids get kicked out of their homes, and people like me, others, they'll take them in. They'll help them out. And so adoption might be a safeguard for non-biological kids. This is published by the 19th, another independent journalist, and it's worth looking into if you happen to be in that kind of situation. So that's today's Blue List. It's a lot. I am trying to calm down as we head into the holidays because I've got some end of the year bills that I got to get paid and stuff. Some of that bookkeeping I've avoided all year. I'm really good at avoiding some of the grown-up things, but the time has come. Got to get it done. So I'm not quite sure when I'll be back, but I will be back. But I want to thank you for listening. Today went long, but I had a lot to say about agency, and I hope it hit home. I'd like to know what you thought about it. Thank you much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.